Hello everybody and welcome to another amazing video of DIY investing. Bitcoin is continuing inside of this range as we're waiting to find out whether we're going to be finally breaking out of over 2 months of consolidation. We've talked a lot about what happens when we do see a breakout and also what happens if we were to see more downside. You guys know exactly what my thoughts are, which is why today we're going to be diving into the bigger picture, analyzing each and every one of our long-term cycles, looking at many of the similarities that are inside of this bull cycle in comparison with what we've seen in years past. So make sure you stay all the way to the end so you don't miss out on any of this exciting information. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And with that being said, let's jump right into this amazing video today. Alrighty guys, here we are to start off today's video, and we're going to quickly scan over the shorter time frames, and then we're going to jump into the main part of the video that I wanted to share with you guys. Now right off the bat, inside of Bitcoin, as you guys can tell from yesterday's video, we had this initial breakout, and then this was just ending up in more chop. We came all the way back down, and then we pretty much just went straight back into the same range that we've been in. This is almost the tightest range that Bitcoin's been in for a significant period of time. So anytime we see that the market is doing this sort of range, but it's an extremely tight range, because you guys got to keep in mind that I'm only on an hourly time frame. And so for the last week almost, Bitcoin has maintained, a couple $100 range, and this is all that we've really stuck at for a significant period of time. And so anytime you see this, it means that the volatility is dying out. Anytime that there's a loss of volatility, Bitcoin's volatility is really, really small and it continues to shrink. That's always what happens right before a big move. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be bullish or bearish. It just means that there is a significant move that is brewing. So when we're looking at this and we're seeing Bitcoin in such a small and a tight range, it's important to understand that now is the time where we're going to expect to see a big move one or the other. And right now, we're seeing kind of a sell-off as we open up the early market, and that has everything to do with the S&P 500. Now, you guys know we've been talking a lot about this, specifically talking about this 43.25 level, and we've been wondering whether we were going to come all the way back down and retest that before, we end up making that big breakout, because long term we know that we're pretty close to those all-time highs. And it's looking like after this correction, this will be the time where we actually start the next impulse to all-time highs and even into breaking them into new all-time highs. So what we're watching right now is more or less the last sell-off, which is why I've continued to maintain the thesis that Bitcoin on its big picture is actually approaching a blow-off top upwards of $48,000. I still believe that we're going to do that. Now, the shorter time frames are obsolete in that. We can have a deeper correction or we can break out here and it won't really change anything. But I do believe that ultimately this consolidation we're in right now is going to lead us to a move up to this 48K level before we have a much longer term correction, maybe similar to what we saw over here as far as that goes, just to help you conceptualize things. And the reason why I believe that that is what's happening for Bitcoin is because when we're looking at the S&P 500, the S&P 500 has been breaking out. We broke out of all of our major resistance. The only resistance that we have to break is pretty much the all-time high. And so once this correction is done, that's going to be the moment in time where we finally see that big move in Bitcoin. That's going to be the moment in time where this one finally starts the move to all-time highs as well. Now, in the shorter time frames, we've maintained a descending resistance. Any single attempt that we've had to break out has been rejected. And most recently, in the last little bit, we've actually seen a sell-off from that support, and we're looking like we're actually going to be making a lower low. So as it stands, this looks like it's probably going to end up making one more lower low. And where I think that takes us is most likely 4,400, and at the low end we have this target like I've been talking about here, which would just be a perfect support and resistance flip above this 4,320 level. And so this is what we're watching for moving forward with crypto, moving forward with Bitcoin in the stock market. So now let's talk about the comparisons that I had for the day's video, and this is going to really give you guys a great perspective as far as prior cycles, understanding some of the similarities, understanding the differences, and most importantly, what is going to be so powerful about this cycle. So when we're looking at this first cycle in 2015 of today's comparison, the reason I'm going to be starting here is because this is where we sync up the most consistently with a 4-year cycle. This is where we're at the point of getting almost exactly 1,450 days from bear market low to bear market low. I really like this one in comparison to our current cycle today, just mainly because of how similar the two cycles actually are in their price action. Now, in this cycle for Bitcoin, and this is something you guys have heard me talk a lot about, we're going to go through kind of the same turn of events each and every one of our cycles. And this is something that's going to be universal on your any sort of time frame. Any type of trader is going to be able to use these. These are just basic tools and basic forms of technical analysis that we use to give us an idea of what happens in the market. What we notice here in each of the cycles, we're getting a top and a blow-off top, I should say, at least in these cycles. In our most recent cycle, on our last bull run, we didn't see the same blow-off top that we were accustomed to seeing, which actually caught me off guard, especially if you were watching my channel from, pretty much the beginning of it, all the way back in early 2019, all the way back in early 2018. And so that was something that caught me off guard. I was expecting that in the same way all of our cycles had kind of made this first breakout, and then they always went into a final blow-off top. That's what I thought this was right here. I thought that we were getting ready for that final blow-off top, and we were pretty much just right here, right? And then that was what caught me off guard the most in the last cycle, and really the reason why I wasn't able to realize as much profits as I could have. So right off the bat, guys, in each of these two cycles, we saw the same thing. We ended up topping at the end of the year. This one topped in November of 2013. And then in this cycle, we once again topped November of 2021. So these two cycles were very similar as far as their topping points of their bull cycles. Now in this cycle, we had almost exactly a 1-year bear market. You're looking at 365 to 364 days, depending on where you're drawing the exact low. And this is going to be universal across the board. We see about a 1-year bear market. This one in 2015 was actually the longest bear market that we saw, being a little over 400 days before we got to our main capitulation. Now this is where we once again see similarities. Notice how the exact low of our bear market, just in our last bear market, the end of the year 2022. So we actually saw in the exact same way that we topped in the winter, we ended up bottoming 1 year later in the winter again, almost exactly 365 days. So what I find is interesting here is we topped here November, December, somewhere around those time frames, and then where did we bottom? January the 13th of 2015. So we're seeing the exact similarities, the same relationship repeated in every cycle. We're seeing nearly a 1-year decline in the bear market. We're seeing a top in the winter. We're seeing a bottom in the winter. And then each of these bottoms measured to the next bear market bottom equals 4 years, right? And this is where we get 4-year cycles. Peak low to peak low, 1,429 days. Remember, 1,450 days is 4 years. So this is the way that the cycles start to sync up and how we get so many similarities. Now, what I think is important to understand is the beginning of the cycles, because what we notice so far in this cycle is we're seeing the same thing. We've seen a descending resistance. The bear market's lasted 1 year. After 1 year, we see the breakout and basically the retest of descending resistance as support. And that's pretty much the same thing that we saw right over here. The only difference was we made a lower low in our last bear market in 2022, whereas in Bitcoin in 2015, we finished the capitulation at the end of the year. So there is always going to be some differences, but I think it's pretty obvious to tell that the main portion of what we're looking for is almost exactly the same. It's as if you're taking a look in the mirror and it's being, your reflection is being flipped back. Each and every cycle is a reflection of the last, and this is why I love time frames, is because they sync up to these time frames, and that's really why they are making these patterns, why they make these cycles in the first place. And so it's not like, every cycle is going to be 100% the same, but the price action will always vary. However, when we're looking at the time frames, this is what stays the same. And so that's why I say, in the same way I got caught off guard because of the price action in our last cycle, I got too overly invested with the idea of a blow off top, and that's not what happened. I should have stuck to the 4-year cycle time frames because this predicted a perfect cycle top, right? And so that's my big mistake. That's my big takeaway going into this cycle, is no matter what the PA is going into our time frames, we need to take profit regardless. So up to this point, we've seen pretty much the same thing. A breakout of the bear market, a retest of the bear market low. This is all happening at the end of the year, and then this is where we start the new cycle, right? So we're going to remove these drawing tools, and then we're going to be taking a look at this into the bull cycle. Now, 2017 was the most consistent uptrend that we've really ever seen inside of any of our bull markets. We saw consistent higher highs and higher lows off of this trend. They were quick impulses, but we were always accumulating right off of this main trend. We always came back and kind of held support above this until at this point when we were breaking all-time highs, we basically started an even steeper parabolic trend. So in that cycle, this was the most consistent uptrend that we ever saw, where it was just really steady, higher highs and higher lows. You know, you didn't have to guess anything, you just bought the trend line and everything was smooth until we broke out. Now, this is where this cycle so far is actually pretty similar. Up to this point, we've actually seen a lot of the same kind of things. So in this bull cycle, we've actually seen relatively the same sort of, uptrend, I would argue. And there's still an argument to be made that we come back down here and tag this. Don't get me wrong, we could come down and hit this before we go up again, but it doesn't change anything. What we're seeing here in 2016, was the beginning of our new 4-year cycle, just maintaining higher highs and higher lows up until the point of breaking all-time highs. Now, from the main point of capitulation to where we ended up breaking out of all-time highs, we tapped all-time highs right here, March of 2017. So you were looking at about 785 days worth of consolidation from the exact low of the bear market to us actually hitting those all-time highs. And you were looking at about 850 when we started actually flipping those all-time highs and going into new all-time highs. So in this current cycle, from where we bottomed at the very low end of our bear market, which I think technically would actually be this little wick down in here, we are currently sitting at about 267 days, so nowhere close to that. If we were going to be looking at, roughly the same sort of time frames, we're going to be going all the way over here to like 850 approximately. We're going to be looking at, March 2025 before we're at the point of breaking all-time highs. And that's assuming that we have just your standard sort of, bull cycle and the accumulation to it. And so kind of the reason why I've personally leaned towards us not having quite the same sort of, beginning to the cycle is because what I see happening for here is wherever we bottom, wherever we start going up, I think that we're going to have one more run up to this first lower high, 48,500. And then from there, we'll go through a deeper sort of consolidation. I don't know how long it'll take, but what I'm mainly looking for is for us to come back down to around 30K to 25K at the low end. That to be kind of our main low point, and then for us to actually start another higher high in its place. Something a little bit more consistent with what we saw over here in our last bull cycle and the beginning of. Now, I know that we can't just get hindsighted into thinking that just because the last cycle played out in a certain way, this one has to play out in the exact same way. And that's why I'm telling you guys that every single one of our cycles are different and we don't know what's going to happen. All we can do is look at similarities, but so far to me, the similarity in relationship to the beginning of this cycle mirrors a lot more consistently with what we saw right here in 2019. And so a move all the way up here to the 618 for Bitcoin would be 48,500, and then that would be a pretty consistent type of move. And I'm not anticipating us to really be breaking all-time highs until probably sometime mid 2024. That would be kind of my guess, but it's anybody's best guess. We really have no idea what's going to happen. What I do know, based off my own trading plan, is every single one of these cycles, from the low end of our bear market to the point of us flipping all-time highs, was about 730 days. So that's what we're looking for from the low of our bear market to the time of us actually breaking all-time highs. And it was pretty much the exact same thing here in 2015 as well. Well, I should say 2016 and 2017. From the low end to us flipping or at least hitting those all-time highs, you were looking at 750 to about 785 days, around the exact same time as what we saw over here inside of our last bull market. So inside of the one that we're at today, if we're looking at roughly the same sort of thing, that's going to be putting us at the end of the year 2024 to even the beginning of 2025 at the earliest. So we have to remember here, guys, that this is a long-term game. We can't get too overly caught up in the beginning of the cycle. Even though we are maintaining very consistent higher highs and higher lows all the way through, it's very similar with everything that we've seen up to this point. If we were to see something like this, and we are to get the move that I am expecting, I do think that we're going to go through a long consolidation, and a really choppy one at that, where we're most likely going to correct all the way back down to 30 to 25K. And that'll be kind of us, hitting the main portion of support that we have as far as our entire consolidation from the all-time highs to the low of our bear market, that's pretty much our equal midpoint. And that's something I've talked to you guys a lot about, analyzing these cycles, is how kind of the first breakout that we see in correction takes us back down to the mid-range point, and that's our main area of consolidation, right? We can see that the first high we made at the beginning of our new bull cycle took us to the mid-range point of our entire consolidation. This was the top of our cycle, this was the bottom of the bear market, this was our mid-range point. And that's right where the first high took us. And so inside of this cycle in 2015, it was kind of the same sort of thing, right? Where the resistance of the first move takes us to this mid-range point, right? Same sort of thing there. And now in 2018, this was the one time where we saw something different. And we actually saw the cycle overextend past the mid-range point and then come and kind of find support around that mid-range point going into the next cycle. So inside of this one today, we're currently sitting at resistance at the mid-range point, and it's looking to me like we're still going to end up going higher. So what I'm looking at based off of the price action is, once again, this final high. I think that we'll come back down to this level, but we're most likely going to end up consolidating around that as support going into the next cycle. I think that we can definitely go lower, like I said, around 25K, kind of give us this move back down to where we've been consolidating on for the majority of the last few months. And then that's going to kind of dictate our main portion of our bull cycle. Because so far, the mid-range point in each of our cycles has marked the turning point in the cycle. If we close below that, we don't get confirmation until we actually flip that. And once we flip that, that's pretty much the go-ahead that we're about to go into price discovery. Same thing happened here inside of Bitcoin. Once we broke out of the mid-range point, flipped it to support, that was where we got the bulk of the parabolic rally. And it was kind of the same thing here. The only difference was, in COVID, we had the black swan. We actually did get this deeper correction. I don't believe we would have saw that had COVID not existed. I still think we could have seen this correction, but we would have closed right here and kept going up, and I don't believe we would have saw, quite the same significance to the downside. But what we can see is, after COVID, we instantly went straight back to that level, and that was kind of where we ended up, flipping it and going into the parabolic rally again. So it still holds true. This middle range point of our cycle, from the bear market low to the cycle top of the bull cycle, that's going to dictate, when we end up getting that parabolic rally. And up to this point, it's been around 500 to 600 days after the bottom of the cycle before we're looking at us actually flipping that as support. So kind of what I'm leaning to personally is, once we finish this next move, we're going to come consolidate back down. We might see a capitulation that takes us just slightly below that to 25K. But I do think that that's where we're going to be able to determine, where we're going to get that next parabolic move. Once this turns into support around here, what I think would be consistent is, like I've stated many times, we have the halving happening mid-2024. It's projected to be April of 2024. And in years past, we haven't really seen a whole lot happen until the halving takes place. Our halving in our last cycle was right here, and then that was where we saw the bulk of our parabolic rally. We can see that the halving in 2016 happened right here. We did see one lower low, but that once again happened right before the bulk of that parabolic rally, and then our first halving happened right here. So every single time we have one of these halvings, it's taking place after we flip the mid-range point, and we're pretty much nearing the point of breaking all-time highs. It happened the same in 2015. We had flipped the mid-range point as support. Even though we made one more lower low after the halving, this was us actually holding support above that mid-range point. And then that's what took us into new all-time highs. The same sort of thing pretty much happened in our last cycle, where after COVID, we rebounded, broke back above the mid-range point, and then we had our halving and pretty much just went straight into new all-time highs. So I would argue that it's going to behave similar if we have, once again, a new 4-year cycle that behaves in the same ways that all of the others have. We're most likely going to be looking at a reconsolidation, a reaccumulation back down around that middle range point, and then we're going to have our halving shortly after we consolidate above it, and then that'll probably be the point where we're doing something like this, getting ready to actually flip those all-time highs. So I just wanted to give you guys a deep perspective on what to look at, what we're looking at moving forward, how to factor in what's going to be taking place, what our last cycles have looked like. Now, I really do think that this cycle specifically is going to be more profitable, just because, like I've stated many, many times, we have more on-ramps like never before. And people always say that every cycle, but this time is, way more legitimate. I've actually been around for our cycles. I got into Bitcoin at $450, so it was at the very beginning of the 2016 and 2017 bull run. So I had the opportunity of seeing what Ethereum did at the very beginning of its cycle when it was worth $5. I had the opportunity of seeing XRP when it was worth half a penny. All of these cryptos do their massive runs. I had the opportunity of watching all of that. And so this is now my third cycle. And with this cycle, I can truly say without a sliver of doubt, there is way more adoption than ever before. We just didn't have the same type of opportunities for retail to buy crypto that we do today. And I think that it's only going to continue to get easier. There's probably going to be some big apps that come out, specifically crypto protocols. It's kind of what we saw in our last cycle. DeFi summer kicked off everything. All of the big craze was in DeFi. There was a specific set, a few altcoins that were in the DeFi space that really led the charge. And we're going to see the same thing. There's always new narratives. There's always new things to look at. But the big thing that we have to keep in mind is we're always prepared right now before the bulk of that happens. We're prepared by studying what has happened throughout the entirety of Bitcoin cycles. And we're prepared by having our investments in place so that once this craziness takes off into the bull cycle, we don't have to second guess, we don't have to question. We know based off of prior cycles, based off of our plan, that we're going to take profits at this exact same threshold. So for me, it's the end of the year 2025. That's what I'm looking forward to. I think that this cycle itself could be one where we have this normal, 4-year cycle type of thing. We end up making this top at the end of the year. I don't know what it's going to be at. But, maybe we go through another bear market, and then after that bear market, maybe we only see one more kind of shortened bull cycle after that before the whole shebang is done. I can't, say specifically, and I won't know, but I do believe we're getting closer and closer to that point where, there's not much more adoption that I think that can happen. It's really just once the governments, once corporations and everything are given the go-ahead, full regulation comes in, adoption's going to happen and be what it's going to be. I mean, yes, everything will slow down and be consistent long term, but what we're talking about is the parabolic rallies, the extreme gains, the 4-year cycles, the thing that's been consistent up to this point. We can't always guarantee that this is going to be the same every single time. So I think that now is the most important time that we're prepared, because this cycle has the potential to be the last true 4-year cycle. And I can't tell you guys how important it is to be ready, be prepared, and be invested before that takes place, because writing out an entire 4-year cycle in specific altcoins that give you those 30, 50, 100x gains, it's a life-changing amount of wealth, especially if you hit one of the big winners, which is possible, but the only way it's possible is by being early. So I hope that I rambled on enough and gave you guys some good analysis and gave you guys some perspective to take away. If you guys found value, drop a comment. I want to hear your guys' thoughts. What do you think is going to happen this cycle? If you guys found value and you want to learn more, you guys want to see what I'm invested in, what I'm trading specifically, links are in the description to go ahead and check out my Discord server. You're going to be able to find out anything that I'm doing with my money, all of my altcoins that I'm invested in that I think are going to be giving us those potential 50 and 100x plays. All of that's in the Discord server. So if you want to check that out, links are in the description to go ahead and sign up on my website. Thank you all so much for the support. And with that being said, I'll catch you in the next one. As always, peace out.